The high sun of Southern California beat down mercilessly, but it was the icy shadow that fell over Elias Vance's face that truly jolted him awake. He wasn't actually asleep, not the deep, restful kind reserved for those who didn't live paycheck to paycheck. He was merely resting his eyes, slumped against the back of the white marble bench beneath a meticulously manicured Canary Island date palm. His hands, gloved and gritty from hours of pulling stubborn Bermuda grass from the edges of the Ethel Corp Plaza, were folded neatly over his faded canvas backpack. A voice, sharp and cutting like a diamond edge, pierced the drowsy afternoon hum. "Get up, you disgusting layabout, now!" Elias, who was currently playing the part of Al, a 60-year-old groundskeeper making minimum wage, pushed himself upright too quickly. A sharp spike of vertigo hit him, and he instinctively pulled the cheap stained baseball cap lower over his eyes. Standing over him was Marcus Thorne, the newly appointed Director of Facilities and Operations. Marcus was a masterpiece of modern, aggressive corporate ambition. His suit, a flawless slate-gray Italian wool, looked too expensive to wrinkle even in the 90-degree heat. A sliver of blinding platinum from the edge of his Rolex Submariner flashed as he gestured wildly towards the pristine fountain a few yards away. "Do you have any idea how bad this looks, Al?" Marcus spat the name out as if it tasted like sour milk. "The chairman of the board is flying in tomorrow. Tomorrow! And here you are, sprawled out like a derelict on Fifth Avenue." Elias blinked, trying to slow his heart rate and remember the exact details of the cover story he'd constructed for his month-long Undercover CEO deep dive. "Mr. Thorne, sir, I was just resting during my mandatory 15. The clock says you are violating Section 4, Subsection B of the Ethel Corp Employee Handbook, maintaining corporate image and professionalism." Marcus sneered, adjusting the knot of his silk tie. His jaw was clenched so tightly that the muscles near his temples flexed visibly. "Professionalism, Al, means looking engaged. It means earning the paltry salary we reluctantly hand over to you people." Elias knew the truth. Marcus despised the grounds crew, the janitors, and anyone who didn't wear a tie. To Marcus, they were merely background static, an inconvenient expense required to maintain the illusion of luxury that defined Ethel Corp, the multi-billion-dollar tech consulting firm Elias Vance had built from scratch 30 years prior. Elias played the role of the humble, scared worker perfectly. He let his shoulders slump and kept his voice barely above a whisper. "I apologize, Mr. Thorne. I've been on my feet since 5 this morning. It's just the heat, sir. I felt a little dizzy." Marcus let out a dramatic stage whisper sigh, loud enough for a group of passing administrative assistants dressed in crisp white blouses and high heels to slow their pace and stare. The air suddenly felt charged with humiliation. "The heat? The heat?" Marcus laughed, a dry, humorless bark. "I work in a climate-controlled office that costs more to cool than your entire annual income, and I still manage to perform. You know that smell, Al? That rank, sweaty aroma clings to you. It doesn't exactly scream cutting-edge excellence, does it?" Elias felt the shame rise thick and bitter. He had spent 2 weeks perfecting the Al persona. The worn work boots purchased from a second-hand store downtown, the slightly too large faded green uniform designed to look genuinely used, the careful application of dust and sweat stains that wouldn't wash out completely. He knew he looked and smelled like hard, honest labor. He had placed himself specifically on this bench, right next to the walkway that led from the main executive parking lot to Marcus Thorne's departmental office. It was a deliberate test of character. Elias, the CEO, had noticed a disturbing pattern of facility managers dismissing older, long-serving staff simply because they didn't look ambitious enough. "I only have 20 more minutes left in my shift, Mr. Thorne," Elias pleaded. emphasizing the fatigue in his voice. He glanced down at his backpack, the true Scooby-Doo detail. Inside the worn canvas was not a thermos or a stale sandwich, but a waterproof encrypted satellite phone and a sheaf of internal audit documents detailing Marcus Thorne's extravagant expense reports and questionable labor practices. 20 minutes is 20 minutes too long for you to poison the optics of this campus, Al, Marcus said, his voice rising in fury. He leaned in, his cologne expensive and sharp, overwhelming the clean scent of the manicured roses nearby. You know what I see when I look at you. I see mediocrity. I see someone who peaked in 1985 and now expects Ethel Corp to serve as a retirement home. Marcus stood up straight, folding his arms. The Rolex gleamed. Effective immediately, you are terminated. Consider this your pink slip. Elias maintained his role, letting his jaw drop slightly in feigned shock. Terminated? But, sir, I've worked here nearly 6 years. I've never had a complaint before Mr. Johnson left. Mr. Johnson was the previous facility manager, a kind man who had focused on results rather than appearance, and who had been suspiciously dismissed 3 months ago, an incident Elias was actively investigating. Johnson was soft, sentimental. We need grit, Al, not sympathy, Marcus stated, radiating merciless efficiency. And 6 years means nothing when you compromise the brand. Furthermore, you were sleeping on the job, which is gross misconduct. It voids any severance eligibility. This was the punch that hit hardest, not the firing, but the immediate denial of basic financial security. Elias knew what being fired without severance meant for a person truly living paycheck to paycheck. It meant the rent check bouncing, the utilities being shut off, and the crushing anxiety of having nothing to cushion the fall. "Please, Mr. Thorne," Elias begged, forcing a tremor into his voice. He dropped his gaze to the polished, expensive shoes of the manager. "I need this job. My wife, she has medical bills. Just a warning, please. I promise I won't even sit down for the rest of the day." Marcus smiled, a chillingly precise, thin-lipped expression devoid of warmth. "That's not Ethel policy, Al. We don't tolerate weakness, and we certainly don't subsidize poor life choices. Your medical bills are not the responsibility of a multi-billion-dollar corporation focused on quarterly growth. Now, hand over the uniform shirt. The company owns it, and you won't be needing it anymore." Elias felt a deep, genuine surge of contempt. Marcus Thorne wasn't just cruel, he was institutionally cruel, using the guise of corporate efficiency to strip dignity from those beneath him. Elias had given Marcus the ultimate test, a plea based on genuine human need. Marcus had failed, catastrophically. Elias slowly peeled off his gardening gloves, revealing hands that, beneath the layer of grime, were powerful and slightly scarred. Hands that had signed billion-dollar contracts and had once laid the foundational cables for Ethel Corp's first server room. "If I leave now," Elias said, his voice quiet but steady, "when can I expect my final check, sir?" Marcus sighed again, checking his watch, clearly impatient to be rid of the smell and the sight of desperation. "You'll receive a notice detailing your termination and the prorated minimum wage due. Don't expect it quickly. There's paperwork involved in gross misconduct cases," Marcus snapped. He leaned in one last time, his voice dropping slightly, laced with pure managerial malice. "And trust me, Al, if I ever catch you loitering on this property again, I will have security escort you off the premises and slap you with a restraining order. Do I make myself clear?" Elias nodded, his heart hammering not from fear, but from the immense, thrilling satisfaction of knowing what was coming next. He hoisted the worn canvas backpack onto his shoulder, savoring the weight of the satellite phone inside. "Perfectly clear, Mr. Thorne," Elias confirmed, his eyes catching the light for the briefest moment. A flash of blue steel hidden beneath the humble cap. I understand how Ethel Corp handles its employees. Marcus merely waved a dismissive hand, already turning away to check his phone. Good, now get out of my sight. Elias Vance, the founder and chief executive officer of the $20 billion Ethel Corp, turned and began the long, slow walk toward the street curb, feeling the burning heat of the sun and the searing contempt of his subordinate on his back. The test was over. Marcus Thorne had just sealed his own fate, all for the sake of eliminating a perceived stain on the corporate image. The game was about to shift from stealth to destruction. Marcus Thorne did not climb the corporate ladder. He bulldozed through it. At 34, he possessed the razor-sharp ambition and emotional vacancy often mistaken for genius in the upper echelons of the American corporate structure. He had been hired 6 months ago to optimize the facility's management, a euphemism Elias Vance suspected meant fire anyone over 50 and replace them with automated drones. Marcus's background was the antithesis of the bootstrap struggle Elias Vance embodied. Marcus was raised on Nantucket, the beneficiary of trust funds and private equity dinners. His father, a successful, emotionally distant hedge fund manager, had installed in Marcus an unwavering belief that poverty was a moral failing, and that hard work was something other people did so. He could have clean parking lots and freshly brewed artisanal coffee. He viewed people like Al, the groundskeeper, not as necessary laborers, but as drain on shareholder value. They were line items in a budget that Marcus was determined to slash in order to earn his year-end bonus. In the 6 months since his arrival, Marcus had cultivated a toxic environment centered on fear. His office on the 12th floor, a corner space overlooking the immaculate grounds he policed with such vigilance, was a temple to his own vanity. The walls were minimalist white, the desk was glass and chrome, and the temperature was perpetually set to 65 degrees, reinforcing the coldness of his demeanor. 1 floor down, Martha Jenkins, a beloved nearly 30-year veteran of Ethel Corp's accounting department, lived in quiet dread. Martha had worked under the company's first CEO, Elias Vance, and had appreciated his old-school belief in loyalty and long-term contracts. She had seen the company grow from a scrappy startup to a global powerhouse, but since Marcus's arrival, the air in the office had turned thick and stagnant. Marcus, in his quest to find operational redundancies, had singled out Martha. She was 58, suffered from persistent quiet arthritis, and took exactly 45 minutes for lunch, often spent quietly at her desk reviewing personal finances. Last Tuesday, Marcus had publicly humiliated her in the staff meeting. "Martha," he had drawled, looking up from his tablet, not meeting her eyes, "I notice you still print out every single quarterly report. Are you aware that we utilize a paperless system, or are you perhaps suffering from some sort of technological impediment?" Martha's face had flushed crimson. "No, sir. I'm simply double-checking the hard copies against the electronic entries to catch discrepancies before the auditors arrive. It's the procedure I've followed since 1998, and we've never had an error on my watch." "Well, you need to update that procedure," Marcus had snapped, his tone dismissing 2 decades of loyal service. "We are Ethel Corp, not a municipal library. Paper waste is inefficient, and frankly, Martha, I'm concerned about your speed. Perhaps if you sped up your processes, you wouldn't require 30-year-old habits." The implied threat was clear: adapt or vanish. Martha knew he wanted her out. Her salary, earned through decades of dedicated service, was too high for Marcus's optimization spreadsheet. He was trying to push her to quit so he wouldn't have to pay severance. This cruelty was Marcus's signature. He didn't fire people quickly. He psychologically squeezed them until they handed in their resignation, making him look like a savior to his superiors for cutting costs without the messy trail of wrongful termination suits. He used company policy like a cudgel, a shield protecting his lack of morality. He would spend 20 minutes documenting an employee taking an extra 5-minute coffee break, but ignore the $2,000 he billed to the company for a client entertainment dinner he had eaten alone. Elias, still walking down the street outside the Ethel headquarters, played the scene of the firing back in his mind. The detail that stung most was Marcus's insistence on the pink slip, and the denial of severance based on a petty, manufactured charge of gross misconduct. Your medical bills are not the responsibility of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Marcus had no idea how deeply that specific insult had cut. Elias Vance hadn't founded Ethel Corp to dodge social responsibility. He had founded it to create an environment where loyalty was rewarded and hard work meant stability. Elias reached the corner, stepping out of the direct glare of the sun into a bus shelter. He pulled off the old baseball cap and ran a hand over his expertly applied silver hairpiece. He reached into the canvas backpack, bypassing the satellite phone for a moment, and pulled out a battered, cheap flip phone. He needed a ride. Not a bus, but the kind of ride that would make the pavement tremble. He dialed the internal executive line, a number only 3 people in the world possessed. The phone was answered immediately by a voice thick with concern. "Mr. Vance, where are you? We've been tracking your GPS location near the South Campus entrance for the last 5 minutes. Is everything all right? Should I initiate Protocol Gamma?" Elias, no longer Al, smiled, a cold, predatory expression that rarely graced the face of the kind-hearted CEO, but which was essential for the founder when corporate hygiene was required. "Gamma is on standby, Janice, but not yet. I need a clean extraction. I was just terminated by a man named Marcus Thorne, the director of facilities. He accused me of sleeping on the job and smelling like sweat," Elias said, his voice flat. "The man has zero integrity." "Good heavens, sir," Janice gasped. "I want the company's black Maybach sedan, driven by Thomas, waiting across the street from the main executive parking lot in exactly 15 minutes. Have Thomas wear the formal uniform, and Janice pull every file on Marcus Thorne. Every expense report, every disciplinary action, every email correspondence with HR regarding Martha Jenkins and anyone else he's optimized in the last 6 months. I want the complete picture." He paused, looking back at the gleaming, monolithic structure of Ethel Corp, a building Marcus Thorne believed he commanded. "And make sure Thomas brings my good suit, the custom-tailored Navy one. I want to look professional when I return to the office to collect my severance." Elias hung up the phone, placed the flip phone back into the grubby backpack, and settled in to wait. The transition from Al, the tired groundskeeper, to Elias Vance, the ruthless CEO, was complete. Marcus Thorne had made his final mistake. End of part 1. Marcus Thorne felt the delicious warmth of self-justification spread through his chest as he walked back inside Ethel Corp's main tower. He ran a hand over the immaculate lapel of his charcoal Hugo Boss suit, careful not to wrinkle the material. That scruffy, smelly groundskeeper, Al, as he irritatingly called himself, had been a visual cancer on the perfectly manicured landscape. Getting rid of him was not cruelty. It was corporate hygiene. He passed through the lobby, where the air conditioning chilled the blood, and nodded curtly at the 2 security guards stationed by the marble reception desk. They knew who he was. Director of Facilities, a man who held the power to make their lives either smooth or hellish. Marcus was acutely aware that the respect they showed was purely transactional, and he liked it that way. Respect born from fear was the only kind that never disappointed. His office, located on the 21st floor, was a monument to his climb. It was all glass, steel, and expensive Danish furniture. The view overlooked the very grounds where men like Al sweated and toiled for minimum wage. Marcus poured himself a glass of imported Italian sparkling water and settled behind his desk, the smooth leather of his chair sighing in acknowledgement of his success. He had not been born to this. His father had been a janitor who smelled perpetually of pine cleaner and stale cigarettes. Marcus remembered the shame of the faded, cheap suits his father wore to school functions, the constant anxiety about the bills, the endless loop of living paycheck to paycheck. That life was a swamp, and Marcus had pulled himself out by the roots, determined to never ever be dragged back down by weakness or sentimentality. He hated the smell of sweat. He hated the worn-out shoes, the greasy hair, the lack of ambition that defined the service class. They were complacent, slow, and worst of all, they reminded him of the failure he had escaped. They deserved to be treated as cogs, disposable when they chipped. Marcus swiped open his disciplinary tracker on his monitor, a clean green interface that tallied terminations and write-ups. He logged Al's firing, gross violation of Article 4, subsection B, dereliction of duty, sleeping on company time, and Article 6, subsection D, failure to maintain corporate image, hygiene. It was clean. It was by the book. He took a long, cold sip of water, feeling superior. If those people applied themselves, if they pushed, if they sacrificed their personal lives like he had, they wouldn't be sleeping behind shrubbery. His mind drifted back to Martha Jenkins. Martha had been one of the lead supervisors in the catering department, a woman who had worked for Ethel Corp for nearly 15 years. She was dependable, dedicated, and widely liked by her team. Marcus had terminated her 6 months ago. The reason? She was 3 minutes late submitting the catering budget for the annual shareholder dinner, a budget that was critically correct. The official paperwork had cited inability to meet critical deadlines and unreliability in executive-level reporting. The reality was that Martha had stopped at the hospital on the way to work to check on her 12-year-old son, who had been admitted late the night before with a severe asthma attack. Marcus hadn't cared. He didn't allow exceptions. If you let one slip, the whole system collapses, he had rationalized to his deputy at the time, ignoring the wet streaks running down Martha's face. The policy is clear. We are running a multi-billion-dollar corporation, not a daycare. Personal issues stay home. We pay people to deliver perfection. If she can't handle a simple deadline, she's a liability. He remembered her quiet dignity even as her world crumbled. She didn't scream or beg. She just packed her cheap, worn cardboard box and walked out, taking her decade and a half of loyalty with her. Marcus had felt a satisfying rush of control. He had cleared out the dead wood, making room for someone hungrier, someone more ruthless, someone like him. He knew Elias Vance, the CEO, preached about Ethel values and investing in human capital. But Marcus dismissed that as necessary window dressing for press releases. True power meant making the tough, unpopular decisions. It meant removing the visible flaws, and that was precisely what Al had been, a visible flaw. Marcus leaned back, checking his reflection in the pristine window glass. He saw a man of power, competence, and immaculate taste. His quarterly report needed to show 0 incidents of employee misconduct, 0 safety hazards, and absolute visual perfection on the grounds before the board visited next week. That groundskeeper, reeking of dirt and lethargy, would have ruined the optics. Suddenly his desk phone buzzed. It was Gary, the head of security. Gary sounded nervous, his voice tight. Marcus, I hate to bother you, but we have a small issue here in the main security kiosk. I need you to confirm something for me. Make it quick, Gary. I'm preparing a critical memo for executive review, Marcus replied, injecting just the right amount of impatient authority into his tone. It's about the groundskeeper you just let go. Al, I think his name was. When he was leaving, he passed the main fence line and stopped by the industrial waste bins. I didn't see it clearly on the camera, but one of my juniors said he was trying to retrieve something. Marcus's composure fractured. Retrieve something? Are you telling me that Vagrant tried to scavenge from Ethel Corp property after he was terminated? Marcus spat, his voice rising, instantly disgusted. The audacity was unbearable. It was an insult to the entire corporate structure. We haven't confirmed scavenging, sir, but he did appear to be hiding something in that beat-up canvas backpack of his. It looked like he tucked something away from the top of the industrial trash compactor before crossing the street, Gary stammered. Marcus slammed his fist lightly on the leather desk pad, the muffled sound barely cutting through the silent office. This was unacceptable. This wasn't just dereliction of duty. This was theft, or at least it could be framed as theft. The man had been warned, fired, and now he was potentially stealing company property, or worse, something sensitive from the shred bins. Marcus's mind immediately saw the headline, "Fired Ethel Corp employee arrested for stealing confidential documents from trash." Gary, listen carefully. I want you to intercept him immediately. He is currently standing across the street, possibly near the executive parking entrance. I don't care if he's on public property. If he has anything in that bag that originated from Ethel Corp, it is theft, Marcus ordered, his voice dangerously low. Bring him back here. Use necessary force. I want that backpack searched, and I want an incident report filed. If we find anything, a piece of scrap metal, a used coffee filter, anything, call the NYPD. We will press charges for trespassing and theft of company property. We need to make an example of him. He is not just fired, he is being prosecuted. Do you understand? Marcus leaned back, a grim, satisfying smile crossing his face. This was better than simply firing him. This was complete and utter annihilation. He was not just clearing the corporate ledger, he was destroying the life of a low-wage worker who dared to defile his perfect campus. He was cementing his status as a cutthroat manager who protected Ethel Corp at all costs, earning the approval of the invisible board. He looked at his gold Rolex. 11 minutes left until his next meeting. Plenty of time to watch the humiliation unfold. He rose from his chair, adjusting his tie one last time, and walked toward the window overlooking the street. He could see Gary and two uniformed officers jogging toward the shabby figure of Al, who stood patiently, innocently, waiting for the Maybach that Marcus, in his magnificent arrogance, had no idea was coming. The groundskeeper looked up just as Gary reached him, blocking his path. Marcus watched the scene with cold, clinical pleasure. The trap was sprung. The sterile, climate-controlled air of Marcus Thorne's executive suite felt miles away from the humid, exhaust-choked sidewalk where Al stood waiting. Marcus gripped the edge of the granite windowsill, his reflection shimmering faintly in the glass, a sharp silhouette against the backdrop of the Manhattan skyline. Below him, three figures. The broad, intimidating frame of Gary, the head of security, flanked by two equally serious jacketed guards, converged on the disheveled gardener. Marcus watched the scene like a general observing a minor skirmish from a bunker. He felt nothing but a cold, clinical satisfaction. This was the final step of waste management. Gary reached Al first, his large hand landing heavily on the gardener's shoulder. Even from 30 stories up, Marcus could read the aggression in Gary's posture. Feet planted wide, chin jutted out. Al, seemingly oblivious, or perhaps simply too weary to care, flinched only slightly. He turned slowly, his old jacket pulling taut across his thin back, and looked up at the towering security officer with eyes that seemed utterly resigned. "We need to talk." Gary's voice, though muffled by the glass, was easily imagined. A thick, gravelly bark used to intimidation. Al just shook his head, a gesture of profound fatigue. "I'm off company property, officer. I already clocked out. Manager Thorne made sure of that." "We believe you are in possession of corporate property," Gary countered, moving to block Al's path entirely. "We need to see what's in the bag." Al clutched the faded canvas backpack tighter to his chest. This was the object, the small, specific detail that was meant to be his protection against the harsh streets, not a liability. It held his lunch thermos, a worn paperback book, and the only item he considered truly valuable, a small, framed photo of his late wife. "It's just my things," Al murmured, trying to sidestep the guard. "I don't work for Ethel Corp anymore. I don't owe you anything." The two flanking guards moved in, boxing Al against a decorative wrought iron fence that separated the public sidewalk from the executive parking apron. The very spot where, in 5 minutes, the customized Maybach would appear. Marcus leaned forward, tapping his manicured finger against the glass. He could practically taste the righteous fury building in Gary. This was not merely a search. This was a power demonstration. "Let's make this easy on both of us, Al," Gary sneered, deliberately using the casual nickname Marcus had passed down. "Hand over the backpack. If it's just your thermos, we let you go. If you resist, we take you down. And when the police arrive, they'll book you not just for theft, but for resisting arrest and assault." The threat hung heavy in the smoggy air. Al looked down at the sidewalk, a moment of profound internal struggle playing across his face. He had endured the humiliation of the firing, the insults, the lack of severance, but to be physically searched, to have his few personal relics poured through by these hired thugs, felt like the ultimate violation. This was not testing Marcus. This was a test of Al's own resolve to maintain his humble cover. He slowly slid the backpack off his shoulder. "Okay," Al said, his voice surprisingly firm but low. "You search it, but you touch nothing that doesn't belong to the company." Gary grinned, a cruel, satisfied flash of white teeth. He unzipped the bag violently, scattering the contents onto the cold, unforgiving concrete. The paperback book slid under a bicycle rack. The thermos rolled toward the street. And there, sitting amidst the scattered belongings, was the object Marcus had been waiting for. Marcus's eyes, viewing the scene through his polarized window, narrowed with confirmation. It wasn't cash. It wasn't jewelry. It was something far more damning in the corporate ecosystem. It was a piece of pipe, a short, jagged length of corroded copper piping, perhaps 10 inches long, clearly salvaged. It was the detritus of yesterday's plumbing work in the East Wing drainage system, scheduled to be hauled to the scrapyard this afternoon. Al had spotted it, a heavy, expensive piece of metal, and slipped it into his bag. Perhaps he needed the scrap value to make up for the lost shift, or perhaps he intended to use it for a small, needed repair at his own ramshackle apartment. To Marcus, it didn't matter why, it only mattered what. Copper, valuable scrap, corporate property. Gary picked it up, holding the heavy, tarnished cylinder between his thumb and forefinger as if it were a biohazard. "Well, well, what do we have here?" he asked the other guards, loud enough for nearby pedestrians to turn their heads. "Looks like someone decided to give themselves a little severance package, eh, Al?" Al's face flushed scarlet. "That's scrap. It was in the discard bin by the loading dock. It was being thrown out. Being thrown out and in your bag are two different things, pal," Gary spat. "This pipe belongs to Ethel Corp. You walked off company premises with it. That's theft. Grand larceny, possibly. This is expensive metal." Marcus reached for the secure line on his desk phone, his heart rate accelerating with cold, ruthless joy. This was perfect. The evidence was irrefutable, regardless of the pipe's scrap value. He didn't need $1,000 worth of stolen goods. He needed the principle of theft established. This ensured Al would never, ever be able to claim unemployment or severance. And crucially, it cemented Marcus's reputation as the uncompromising protector of Ethel's assets. He dialed Gary's direct line. Down on the street, Al was desperately trying to explain, his voice rising in panic. "I only needed a few dollars. I haven't eaten all day. Please, this is just trash metal." "Trash metal you decided to steal," Gary countered, holding up the pipe like evidence in a courtroom. "You've got a real nerve coming back after being fired and immediately robbing us blind. It's disgusting." The phone in Gary's pocket buzzed loudly. He answered on speaker, ignoring Al's protests. "Yeah, Marcus, we got him." Marcus's voice, amplified and distorted through the cheap phone speaker, resonated through the tense air of the sidewalk. It was a voice dripping with contempt. "What did he have?" Marcus demanded. "A piece of copper piping, sir. Looks like a section of the old drainage. Definitely corporate property. He admits to taking it from the loading dock area," Gary reported, carefully avoiding Al's pleading gaze. "The loading dock is private property, Gary. He was trespassing to commit a crime." "This is a felony," Marcus declared, emphasizing the legal severity. "Do not let him go. I want the NYPD called immediately. I want him booked, fingerprinted, and charged. We will pursue this to the absolute fullest extent of the law. I want this man to understand that when you steal from Ethel Corp, you don't just lose your job, you lose your life." The sheer brutality of the statement, broadcast for all to hear, the two guards, the few Gawkers, and Al himself, was staggering. Al stared up at the sheer, reflecting face of the building, knowing Marcus was likely watching from his pristine, hermetically sealed bubble. The gardener realized the full extent of the trap. This wasn't about the pipe. It was about Marcus proving his power, asserting dominance, and crushing the weak under the heel of corporate policy. This test wasn't just to see if Marcus would show mercy. It was to see if he was capable of complete, calculated destruction. He had failed the test spectacularly. "Mr. Thorne, please," Al called out, his voice cracking with feigned despair. "I'm sorry. I'll put it back. I'll do anything. Just don't ruin my life over a piece of scrap." Marcus, listening high above, smiled faintly. He was enjoying this performance. He leaned back in his leather chair, the sound of Al's desperation a balm to his stressed nerves. "Too late for apologies, Al." Marcus's voice boomed over the speaker, final and utterly devoid of pity. "The decision has been made. You chose to trespass and steal. You have earned your consequences. Gary, hang up the phone and call the police dispatcher. Tell them we have a suspect caught red-handed, resisting arrest and theft of corporate infrastructure." Gary immediately clicked the line off and pulled out his private cell phone. The two flanking guards moved in, closer now, ready to subdue Al. Al closed his eyes, his breathing heavy. The humiliation was complete. His face, smeared with dirt and sweat, was a picture of defeat. He let his shoulders slump, offering no resistance as one of the guards roughly grabbed his arm, beginning to twist it behind his back in a restraining hold. The manager had taken the bait, swallowed it whole, and proceeded to sharpen it into a shiv of legal destruction. Marcus had gone beyond mere cruelty. He had committed career annihilation over a $10 piece of trash. "You really think you're untouchable, don't you, Mr. Thorne?" Al muttered so quietly that only Gary, who was dialing 911, could possibly hear him. Gary laughed, a harsh, dismissive sound. "Untouchable. He owns half this city, pal. He runs this place. You think you matter to him? You're dirt, literally." Al offered no reply. He just stood there, enduring the rough grasp of the security guard. He had played the part of the destitute victim flawlessly. He had asked for mercy, offered repentance, and been met with judicial malice. Marcus, watching the submission from his window, felt an exhilarating rush. The gardener was subdued, the police were on their way, and his report to the board would be flawless. Zero tolerance for theft. Manager Thorne ensures the absolute integrity of corporate assets. He adjusted his expensive silk tie. It was precisely at that moment, as Gary finished the 911 call and reported their location, that a sound began to intrude upon the relative quiet of the executive street. A low, rhythmic rumble, growing swiftly louder. Marcus frowned slightly, glancing at his Rolex. It was 3 minutes early. A long, obsidian black vehicle turned the corner onto the street. It was wide, low-slung, and silent in its movement, but its presence announced authority. A customized, bulletproof 2024 Maybach S-Class, meticulously detailed, gliding toward the executive entrance. The license plate was simple, customized, and utterly unmistakable, even from 30 stories up. Ethel 1. The vehicle slowed, not pulling into the private garage entrance, but stopping right next to the curb, precisely where Al was being held by the security guards. The polished black door of the Maybach began to glide open. Marcus's triumphant smile evaporated. His blood turned instantly to ice. Ethel 1. That car belonged to one man. It never arrived early. It never stopped curbside. And the man who owned it never, ever came without notifying the entire corporate structure hours in advance. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. What was happening? Who was driving? Where was the official motorcade? Down on the street, Gary and the two security guards froze. Their professional instincts recognized that car immediately. It was the Chariot of Gods. The door opened fully, revealing the plush cream-colored interior and the massive polished boot of a bespoke Italian leather shoe stepping onto the sidewalk. Gary immediately shoved Al away from the car, straightening his uniform instantly. "Stand down! Move back!" he hissed to his men, his voice now high with genuine fear. "Who is that?" The man who emerged was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than Gary's yearly salary. He was bald, with a neatly trimmed silver beard, and carried a discreet briefcase. He was the personal assistant to the CEO. The assistant, Robert, ignored Gary completely. He walked around the front of the Maybach and stopped directly in front of the man in the dirty gardener uniform. Al, his arm still smarting from the rough handling, straightened his jacket, brushing off the imaginary dirt from the expensive leather interior he had just touched. He looked at Robert, his expression changing instantly from desperate fatigue to cool, sharp-edged professionalism. "Robert," Al said, his voice now deep, commanding, and utterly unfamiliar to Gary's ears. "Sir," Robert replied, inclining his head deeply, an angle of reverence that shocked the security team into complete silence. "Your transition period is officially over. We have your scheduled 7 a.m. call with the Singapore Exchange in 4 minutes. The driver is ready to escort you." Marcus Thorne watched from above, his hand glued to the icy granite windowsill, his breath catching in his throat. This could not be happening. It was a sick, elaborate joke. But then, Al reached up and ran a grimy hand through his wiry gray-flecked hair, which had been pasted down haphazardly. He gripped the scalp and, with a smooth, practiced motion, peeled the entire wig and prosthetic hairline away from his head. The man standing on the sidewalk was suddenly 30 years younger, his hair thick and perfectly coiffed, his face sharp, intelligent, and radiating power. He was not Al. He was Arthur Ethel, the reclusive, fiercely private founder and CEO of Ethel Corp. The illusion shattered completely. Arthur Ethel, the owner of the massive gleaming tower above them, the man who controlled billions of dollars in assets, looked down at the piece of copper piping that Gary was still holding. His eyes, now clear and cold, flicked to Gary, then to the security guards, and finally directly up at the 30-story window where Marcus stood, paralyzed. Arthur Ethel, no longer the gardener, lifted his left hand and raised a single commanding finger, pointing not at Gary, but directly at Marcus's office window. The trap had not been sprung on the gardener. The manager, high up in his tower of glass and arrogance, had stepped right into it. The finger Arthur Ethel raised was not trembling from fatigue. It was steady, ruthless, and precise, pointed 30 stories straight into the glass cage of the regional manager. Marcus Thorne didn't feel the air conditioning in his pristine office anymore. He felt a sudden, profound drop in temperature, as if the entire atmosphere had been instantly evacuated. His breath seized in his lungs, tasting metallic and sharp. It wasn't Al. It was Arthur Ethel. The name was synonymous with impossible wealth and legendary cruelty toward failure. Marcus watched the security guards below, his guards, the men he had just ordered to call the police, suddenly standing rigid, their posture shifting from aggressive readiness to military stillness the moment the wig came off. The revelation was too sudden, too absolute to be processed as reality. It felt like a seizure, a cosmic joke played out on the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue. Marcus's meticulous world, governed by quarterly metrics and impeccable appearances, dissolved into a screaming chaos. He scrambled back from the window, stumbling over the corner of his bespoke Italian desk. He had fired the wrong man. He hadn't just fired him, he had mocked him, humiliated him, and then tried to frame him for grand larceny to save a few $1,000s in severance pay. He had treated the founder of the company like dirt he himself was responsible for sweeping up. His phone rang, the private line, the one that only Robert, the head of corporate security, used. Marcus snatched it up, his hand shaking so violently he nearly dropped the slick device. "Robert, what the hell is going on? That's impossible. It's a prank, a viral marketing stunt." Robert's voice, usually warm and deferential to the executives, was a flat, chilling monolith. "Mr. Thorne, we are proceeding with the revised directive. Remain in your office. Do not move. Do not touch anything on your desk. I am coming up." The tone was the sound of a guillotine falling. Marcus looked desperately around the office. The panoramic view that usually provided him with a feeling of godlike superiority now felt like a spotlight on a condemned man. He had to fix it. He had to explain. He hadn't known. He reached for his jacket, instinctively trying to appear professional, but his hand froze halfway. Robert had said, "Do not move." Below, the owner of Ethel Corp had already shed the remaining layers of his disguise. He handed the discarded, greasy gardener's jacket to Robert, who accepted it as if it were a sacred artifact. The man who had been Al now stood in a perfectly fitted, though currently rumpled, dark charcoal suit. The expensive Swiss watch that had been hidden beneath the grime-caked cuff of the worker's coat now gleamed, catching the morning sun. The only watch in the world that could synchronize with the Ethel Corp global network. "The driver will wait," Arthur Ethel commanded, his voice carrying an authority that made the surrounding traffic noise seem insignificant. He wasn't yelling. He was simply stating immutable fact. Robert confirmed the recording device captured the entirety of the incident from 6 a.m. "Confirmed, Mr. Ethel," Robert replied instantly. "Audio and visual, including the moment Mr. Thorne ordered the guards to initiate the police report and the attempted planting of the evidence." Arthur Ethel gestured toward the piece of salvaged copper piping still lying innocently on the sidewalk where Gary had dropped it. "That pipe, Arthur said, his eyes hard and unforgiving, is perhaps the most expensive piece of material in this entire corporation now. Ensure it is preserved and catalogued as evidence. Then his cold gaze lifted back toward the 30-story tower, not stopping at Marcus's window, but seeming to pierce straight through the glass and concrete structure itself. "I'll walk the rest of the way, Robert," he stated. "I need to see the corporate image up close." And then Arthur Ethel, the billionaire owner, walked calmly past the lobby entrance that he was meant to clean daily, past the spot where Marcus had humiliated him just hours ago, and entered the building. The elevator ride up to the executive floor was agonizingly slow for Marcus. Though he wasn't on it, he stood trapped, listening to the soft, distant chime as the executive car climbed higher and higher, bringing his executioner closer. When the heavy, soundproof door to his office suite finally opened, it wasn't Robert who walked in first, but Arthur Ethel. The transformation was astonishing. The man who had entered his office was barely recognizable as the old, sweaty cleaner Marcus had despised. The CEO now carried himself with lethal stillness, every movement calculated, every glance costing millions. He didn't sit down. He didn't offer a greeting. He just stood there, absorbing the atmosphere of Marcus's domain. Marcus started instantly, trying to bridge the chasm of their new reality with desperate words. "Mr. Ethel, sir, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I genuinely believed you were the temporary gardener, Al. I was simply enforcing policy. Corporate policy is very strict about security breaches and sleeping on company time, sir, especially with the new contracts." Arthur Ethel raised a hand, stopping the flood of excuses dead in its tracks. The gesture was casual, yet absolute. "Spare me the performance, Marcus," Arthur said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet infinitely more terrifying than a scream. "The policy you refer to is the Ethel Code of Conduct, which I wrote, requiring managers to exercise human discretion, empathy, and integrity, all of which you breached systematically for weeks." Marcus stammered, his polished facade cracking. "But the sleeping, sir, and the smell. We have high net worth clients arriving today. The image—" "The sleeping," Arthur interrupted, stepping closer to Marcus's desk, his eyes fixing on the framed photographs of Marcus's family, his perfectly coiffed wife, his children at an exclusive private school. "I slept for 15 minutes, Marcus. 15 minutes after starting work at 3 a.m. to ensure your entire 30-story building was immaculate before dawn. I was resting, hidden behind a shrub, taking a short, deserved respite. Your policy mandates 2 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch. I took none of those today." Arthur picked up a heavy crystal paperweight, a corporate gift Marcus cherished, and turned it over in his hand. "But let's discuss the smell, Marcus. You told the security team that I was contaminating the environment. Bro, what did you find so contaminating? Was it the scent of honest labor, the odor of minimum wage, or perhaps the lack of expensive cologne, the kind your quarterly bonus buys you?" Marcus was sweating now, the kind of cold, corrosive sweat that stains an expensive shirt. "Sir, I truly regret the tone." "Tone is irrelevant," Arthur cut him off, dropping the paperweight back onto the desk with a heavy thud. "Intent is everything. You didn't just fire a tired employee, Marcus. You abused your power over someone you believed was weak and powerless. The ultimate test of character is how you treat those who can do nothing for you, and those you believe you can crush without consequence." He paused, letting the silence expand until it was unbearable. "You failed the test spectacularly." Behind Arthur, Robert entered, holding a clipboard and flanked by 2 silent security officers who positioned themselves near the exit, effectively sealing Marcus in. "Mr. Thorne," Robert stated formally, consulting the clipboard. "On the morning of October 12th, you instructed your subordinate, Al, the temporary maintenance worker, to gather salvaged copper piping from the basement level, claiming it was scheduled for disposal. After firing him without cause, you then ordered 2 security officers to file a police report claiming Al was attempting to steal this company property you knew to be worthless scrap, worth less than $20, in a deliberate attempt to avoid paying mandatory severance and potentially damage the individual's record. Marcus wanted to scream that he didn't know the scrap was worthless, but that would only incriminate him further by admitting the framing. "That," Arthur said, his gaze locking onto Marcus's panicked eyes, "is attempted fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and gross corporate misconduct. In this company, Marcus, we don't tolerate abuse of power, but we especially don't tolerate financial dishonesty, no matter how small the amount." Arthur reached into the inner pocket of his newly revealed suit and pulled out a plain, beige envelope. It was surprisingly small. "I usually like to delegate human resources matters, but this is personal. You were hired for your financial acumen, Marcus. I disguised myself to see if Ethel Corp had maintained its core principle, respect for the people who make our success possible. You demonstrated that the corporate culture under your management is rotten." Arthur placed the envelope neatly on the desk, right next to the framed photo of Marcus's smiling wife. "This is not a pink slip, Marcus," Arthur said. "This is a termination for cause, effective immediately. You are being escorted out of the building. Your company phone, laptop, and access key are now deactivated. Furthermore, based on the documented attempted fraud and slander, Ethel Corp will be filing criminal charges against you this afternoon." Marcus felt the panic overwhelm him. Criminal charges meant his entire career, his reputation, and his comfortable life, everything he had used the company to build, would be irrevocably destroyed. "Wait, Arthur, please. Think of my family. I have children. Please don't file charges. I'll take the firing. I'll leave quietly, I promise." Marcus lurched forward, reaching out a pleading hand toward the CEO. Arthur Ethel didn't flinch. He took one step back, letting the heavy, suffocating air of the executive suite fill the space between them. "You should have thought of their families, Marcus," Arthur replied, his voice a low, gravelly rasp. "The families of every worker you walked past and deemed worthless. The families of every person living paycheck to paycheck whose dignity you tried to steal today." Arthur nodded curtly at Robert. "Escort Mr. Thorne off the premises. And Robert," he added, turning to face the magnificent cold skyline, "I want the best, most expensive corporate cleaning crew we can find working on this floor tonight. I want the smell of arrogance scrubbed out of every corner.